13 minus 250 years. What We Built, What We're Trading Away, by Jim Jones. Welcome to the D Minus Diaries, episode 28. We hope you enjoy this podcast while you drive, ride, roam, or drone. If you like what you hear, please like the heart button, subscribe, and share it with a friend. Which president did General George Washington report to during the American Revolution? For most Americans, the instinctive answer is none, because there was no president of the United States yet. In reality, Washington did answer to a president, just not the kind we know today. Building a new government does not come with a roadmap, so the Continental Congress, the improvised national government of the war, chose its own presiding officer and called him President of the Congress. Across the lifespan of the Continental and Confederation Congresses, 16 men held that title. Their job was closer to a Speaker of the House or a meeting chair than to a modern commander-in-chief, but at the time they were the closest thing the United States had to a national political head. While those presidents of Congress were arguing over supplies, alliances, and pay for the troops, they also did something far more radical. On July 4, 1776, the Second Continental Congress adopted the Declaration of Independence. On paper, that declaration transformed 13 British colonies into free and independent states, united in a new political identity as the United States of America. From King George III's throne in London, however, nothing had changed. In British eyes, the signers were still subjects in open rebellion. The territory they claimed to speak for was not yet a nation, just a set of colonies that needed to be punished and brought to heel. For years after the declaration, the war could easily have gone the other way. One of the key turning points came in the Carolina backcountry at the Battle of Kings Mountain. On October 7, 1780, frontier patriot militia, the so-called Over-Mountain Men, surrounded and overwhelmed a Loyalist force under Major Patrick Ferguson on a steep ridge straddling the border of the Carolinas. It was a savage, close-range fight, but the consequences were strategic. The defeat wrecked British efforts to build a Loyalist army in the South and gave American forces new momentum just when morale and prospects had been low. That southern unraveling helped draw British commander Charles Cornwallis toward a small port in Virginia called Yorktown. In the autumn of 1781, Washington, now at the head of a combined American and French force, cornered Cornwallis there on a narrow peninsula between the York River and the Chesapeake Bay. After a sustained siege and bombardment, Cornwallis's army capitulated on October 19, 1781. Yorktown did not produce an immediate formal surrender by the British government, but it broke the political will in London to keep pouring blood and money into the conflict. From then on, British leaders were looking for a way to end the war. The actual official surrender came by treaty instead of at a surrender field. After Yorktown, negotiators from Britain and the United States met in Europe to turn a military stalemate into a diplomatic settlement. On the American side, the key figures were Benjamin Franklin, John Adams, and John Jay, later joined by Henry Laurens. They had to bargain over borders, debts, fishing rights, and the treatment of Loyalists, all while dealing with Britain and managing expectations from their own Congress and from France. The result was the Treaty of Paris, signed on September 3, 1783. In that treaty, Great Britain formally recognized the independence of the United States and agreed to a new map of North America. It came a little more than 7 years after the Declaration of Independence. It took that long for the words on parchment in Philadelphia to be matched by British recognition that the colonies were truly gone. Once the war was legally over, a harder task remained. The Americans now had to build a government that actually lived up to the promises they had written down on paper. Even after independence was acknowledged, the political work was not finished. The states were still loosely bound under the Articles of Confederation, and the presidency that Washington answered to was still the rotating limited presidency of the Congress. The system proved too weak for a peacetime republic responsible for debt, trade, and security. In 1787, delegates gathered again in Philadelphia and wrote a new constitution. They signed it on September 17, 1787, and sent it to the states for ratification. Only with that document did the office we now know as the President of the United States come into existence. Under this new national framework, the country now had a separate executive instead of just a presiding officer chosen by a legislature. When the new system finally went live, the country turned naturally to the one man who had become the living symbol of the revolution's success. Under the new constitutional rules, George Washington was elected the first president of the United States and took the oath of office on April 30th, 1789 in New York City. The general who had once taken direction from a committee of states and a series of congressional presidents now occupied a very different kind of presidency, one designed not just to win a war, but to govern a nation that had fought for years to prove that it existed at all. Why has the Declaration of Independence lasted 250 years? Why has the government it helped launch outlived so many monarchies, empires, and revolutions that once looked more solid than 13 scrappy colonies? One answer sits in a single explosive line that most people never really stop to consider. The Declaration says that when a government becomes destructive of the people's rights, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it and to institute new government. That is not just a threat aimed at King George. It is a principle that applies to any government, including the one the Americans would eventually build for themselves. The founding generation wrote into their own birth certificate the idea that no regime is sacred if it tramples the rights it was created to secure. That is where the difference between the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution really matters. The Declaration is not a rule book. It is a statement of first principles. It answers big questions. Where do rights come from? What is government for? When does it lose its legitimacy? It defines a people and their cause in moral and philosophical terms. It does not tell you how many senators there should be or how to run an election. It tells you what any decent government must respect if it wants to claim the name. To the founding generation, rights were not abstract. They became real through speech, worship, work, and especially the ability to own and control property. The Constitution is the opposite kind of document. It is not a manifesto. It is hardware and wiring. It takes the abstract idea of the United States and gives it a structure: Congress, a president, courts, states, and a web of powers and limits. It is full of machinery and procedure, but buried in that machinery is a crucial reality most Americans never have explained clearly. The Constitution is not mainly about what the government can do to you. It is mainly about what the government cannot do or can only do under strict conditions. It sets up a government of enumerated powers. If a power is not granted, the federal government is not supposed to have it. On top of that, it scatters power between three branches and between national and state levels so that no single part can easily swallow the rest. The Bill of Rights drives that point home in plain language. Written in 1789 and taking effect when the necessary states ratified it in 1791, the Bill of Rights is a package of amendments that was added to calm fears that the new federal government might grow into the very kind of tyranny the revolution had just fought. It does not grant rights to the people. It assumes the people already have rights and then tells the government what it must not do to those rights. It forbids Congress from establishing a national church or silencing speech and the press. It protects the right to keep and bear arms. It guards against unreasonable searches and seizures, against being forced to testify against yourself, against cruel and unusual punishments. It insists on due process, fair trials, and the basic protections that stand between citizens and the full weight of the state. So, if the Declaration is the promise, the Constitution is the blueprint, and the Bill of Rights is the fence line. The promise says all people have rights that do not come from kings or parliaments or presidents. The blueprint sets up a government strong enough to function but tangled up in checks and balances. The fence line marks off the areas where that government must not tread. Built into all three is the same stubborn idea that the people come first, that they retain the right to change or even abolish their own government if it betrays them, and that any office, including the presidency, is a trust held under those conditions. The war did one job and the government was supposed to keep doing it. At bottom, the American Revolution was not about national glory. It was about protecting individual rights from abuse by a distant government. The Declaration does not talk about programs and subsidies. It talks about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and about a government that had violated those rights enough that its former subjects felt justified in breaking away. The whole project, from the first shots to the peace treaty, rested on a simple claim. Governments are created to secure individual rights, and when they fail at that one core task, the people may alter or abolish them and build something better. After independence, the framers did not imagine a government that would run every part of life. They wanted a government strong enough to do a few essential things well: defend the country, keep basic order through law enforcement under the law, and operate courts that apply the law fairly and stand as a check on the other branches. In modern times, there are also a few large-scale tasks only government can sensibly coordinate, like setting common rules for interstate roads and airspace so people and goods can move safely and freely. The rest can often be left to private effort, as long as the framework protects individual rights on all those roads and in all that air. The Constitution puts limits on government power over and over. It does give the government certain powers, but it also clearly says many things the government is not allowed to do. For example, it bans special punishment laws aimed at specific people, and it forbids creating fancy royal titles. It limits when the government can suspend habeas corpus, which is the basic rule that says the government cannot just lock you up and keep you there without bringing you before a judge and giving a legal reason. The amendments go even further. The first tells Congress it shall make no law in certain areas. The second says a right shall not be infringed. The fourth says people shall be secure in their persons and property. The 10th says powers not given to the federal government are reserved to the states or to the people. Page after page, the pattern is the same. The people are assumed to have rights by nature, and the government is told in plain language where it must not tread. For the founders, property rights were not an afterthought. They were the test of whether the new government was doing its one real job, which was to protect individual rights. A person who cannot hold property safely is always at the mercy of someone else. If your home, your tools, your savings, and your land can be seized or managed at another's whim, then your other freedoms are fragile. You may still have the right to speak or worship in theory, but in practice you are always one order or one notice away from losing the space where those rights can be lived. Over the centuries, we have slowly traded pieces of that independence away. We sign long loans that put banks and lenders between us and our homes. We accept homeowners associations that can tell us what to build and how to live on land we pay for. We rent instead of owning, which means our hold on a place depends on contracts and markets we do not control. We live under zoning, codes, and rules that reach deep into how we use our own property. None of these things is automatically wrong. Contracts and shared rules can protect people and help communities function. The problem is that each time we hand over responsibility for our own property, we also hand someone else the leverage to shape our lives. In effect, we outsource slices of our freedom in the name of convenience, security, or order. We say it is too hard to manage our own finances, so we accept complex credit systems. It is too messy to work things out with neighbors, so we give more power to boards and regulators. It is too risky to build and own, so we settle for renting and let others make the big decisions. The more we grow used to that pattern, the less practice we have in actually exercising the rights the founding generation fought for. The law may still recognize property rights and protect them, but the culture that knows how to use those rights can quietly fade. There is an old line from Scripture that says the borrower is servant to the lender. A person in debt is never fully free because another hand holds the chain. For 2.5 centuries, generations of Americans have paid a fabulous price to get us where we are today. For many of us, government, institutions, and other entities have slipped into our lives by will, inheritance, or choice. If we want more freedom, we have to start loosening those chokeholds and work to make ourselves better every day, instead of waiting for someone else to manage our problems for us. 250 years is not just old history, it is a long marathon in the pursuit of the American promise, and if you are unhappy with where you are in that story, you still have the ability to chart your own course, to decide how you will better pursue your own happiness, and to take back as much responsibility as you can carry. The founding generation, in their own way, said something similar. For them, freedom was not just a feeling or a slogan, it was the concrete right to own and control property, to stand on a piece of ground and say, "This is mine," and to use the fruits of your labor without asking permission. Put those two ideas side by side and the question almost asks itself. If we tie ourselves to debt, if we sign away control over our homes, our work, and our land, if we let others decide how we may live on what we supposedly own, are we quietly giving up the very inalienable rights we say come from God and not from governments or banks or boards? When you step back and look at the timeline, another number stands out. It took roughly 13 years from the Declaration of Independence in 1776 to the moment George Washington took the oath as the first constitutional president in 1789, with the British gone and a new government in place. In that span, the country went from rebellious colonies to an acknowledged nation with its own institutions. That raises one last uncomfortable question. If it took about 13 years for Americans to go from subjects of a king to citizens of a free republic, how long would it take to go the other way? If we steadily trade responsibility for comfort and property for promises, could a people who once threw off a king drift back into being ruled in barely a decade or two? Or to put it more bluntly, for a 250-year-old republic, if freedom means owning your life and your property, how much of that freedom can we outsource before someone else is effectively ruling over us? As we enter this summer of celebration, enjoy, celebrate, and remember that nothing is truly free, least of all freedom. I would be interested in your thoughts on what you think our future holds. Please leave a comment. May God bless you in these United States. Remember to please like, subscribe, and share. Jim D. Minus Jones.